Good morning. I'm here with the wonderful Janet Nash from Sync Training Solutions. She of a cleaning business guru who's managed to sell her business, manage a cleaning business while raising two kids, and is now in offering training, consultancy and advice around biohazard cleaning. So this promises to be a really great conversation. Janet Nash, how are you? Welcome.
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Joyous. Janet, I'm just going to kick straight in because I know that time is precious and time is money, especially for us as business owners. And I want people to hear as much of you and your story as we go through this little session. So, Janet, I loved our first conversation when we spoke. I like that hour just flew by really quickly. And we shared a lot of different life stuff. But in a nutshell, can you tell us a bit about maybe your personal journey, how you came to specialize in training for biohazard cleaning? That's quite a niche thing.
Sure, no problem. I do struggle to put things into nutshells, but I'll give it a go. So my journey started back in 2011. I opened a cleaning business. My goal was I saw a gap in the market for efficient, reliable and professional cleaning services. And back then I had this vision in my mind that if I was supplying a cleaner to my elderly parents, what would I want that to look like? And I knew that trust, compassion and being affordable and efficient was some of those core qualities. So that ran successfully. I did the journey that a lot of cleaning business owners do. I moved into commercial and construction work. And a little while later, after our reputation had grown, and we were known for being professional and delivering excellence, and an opportunity was offered to me, a route into more complex work, which was biohazard. I'd love to say that I planned it all, but I didn't. It came to me based on our reputation. And that was a gradual move into that's what I call high stake work. And I realized that it opened my eyes. There's no other way to say that it opened my eyes that there are complex biohazard situations in every walk of life. And there's a real need to do the work safely and ethically. So as a company, I invested heavily in training, and we completed hundreds of challenging, I think that's probably the best way to describe them, really challenging biohazard work. And I think for me, two things really stood out. And the first one was that people wanted to do this work. I'd always had it in my mind that people would step back and maybe wouldn't. Actually, they did. People wanted to be involved. They wanted to know how to do it safely and ethically. And the second thing, as I said earlier, was I realized the need for it. Our very first job was immensely sensitive. It's the one that always sticks in my mind, makes me quite emotional when I think about it. And that for me was when I realized that I could have a bigger impact by showing people, teaching people how to do this, not just physically, but how to prepare mentally for this kind of work too. And so fast forward today, having sold my business, as you mentioned, these days I'm known as the biohazard specialist trainer, and I will work with cleaning businesses, not just to do the sort of the academic side, but to really present real world situations to them, real scenarios, to talk about case studies, to help them see that whilst this is high risk, it's massively rewarding, and it's about supporting them to be able to offer those really specialist services and do it well. So that's where I am today.
Can I ask you a question about that? Because I think most people don't understand what a biohazard clean is and what it involves. Can you kind of tell us the broad spectrum? Like, it's from this to this, because I had a couple of surprising revelations during our conversation. Yeah, let's start with that. It's a two-part question. What's it from and to, and maybe what's one of the most challenging environments that you've had to clean as well?
Wow. Okay. So yeah, you're absolutely right that people don't realize how complex it actually is. You know, we're not walking around with feather dusters and a can of polish. We're in hazmat suits. We're in full PPE, respirator masks. It's a high risk environment, and I think that you're dealing with composition, bodily composition, infectious waste. You're dealing with bloodborne pathogens, bacteria. It's really high risk, and I think that for me, those materials pose the risk if it's not done properly. So I guess if you were asking me about the kind of what it actually involves, in my head, I always liken it to, imagine that there's been an accident and a paramedic has arrived on the scene. Not only are they equipped with their medical bag and everything they need, they're mentally equipped for the work as well, and they take control of the situation. They know all the right things to do, and that's how a biohazard cleaner operates. They know exactly, not only do they know the right protocols for cleaning, they know the right protocols for safety. They know how to contain that space. And they know that at the end of it, that space has got to be absolutely safe for anyone to enter. So I think that's the kind of comparison. And for me, the training part of it is absolutely non-negotiable, because it's not an industry where guesswork is a possibility. The risks are way too high for guesswork. So yeah, training is non-negotiable, and those risks are absolutely huge.
So I want to address training in a second, but one of the things that really surprised me was things like mold are a biohazard environment. We get inquiries for mold all the time as a domestic cleaning company. And I think before speaking to you, I knew that it was hazardous to a degree, and there's a degree of personal protection that we're looking at. But I don't think I'd realised maybe this is something we shouldn't be touching without more detailed training. What I had anticipated was, maybe gory murder scenes or things like that. That definitely, I think we can all agree, is a biohazard scene. But it's things at the other end of the spectrum. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I know. I'm laughing. I'm not really laughing, but I'm smiling because I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think I might have said to you, we know that mold is a category 1 risk, but just to put some context around that, think asbestos. We're in the same high risk level. We know that asbestos can do awful things to you if you're exposed to it, and mold will do exactly the same. It has those same risks. So when you kind of compare the two, I think that's when a lot of people say, actually, I shouldn't be doing it. And I smile because on the last training that I did earlier this month, I had some clients here, and they said, but we've been cleaning mold as we go along. It's part of our domestic cleaning. No, stop. So mold, absolutely, it's high risk, should be dealt with by professionals for the glaringly obvious reasons. We know that if it's inhaled, it can sit in your respiratory tract, it can do all kinds of damage to you and can trigger severe illness. But the other things that I think surprise people, so I often talk about in our training, we talk about things like dirty protests. We talk
What does that mean? What's a dirty protest?
So imagine that you have that you are cleaning in a cell environment, wherever that might be. Could be, yeah. So a dirty protest could be obviously you're dealing with fecal matter, and there's risks involved in that. So biohazard, actually, I totaled them up the other day. There are 14 different types of common biohazard scenarios. And when you put them all together, it's a bit like an explosion, because suddenly you see the world with different eyes, completely different eyes. You know, I can't drum that into my children enough about risks and, you know, sharing things and things finding a portal of entry into your system. Yeah, it's incredible.
So give us some examples of those 14 different types so that people that maybe aren't in the cleaning industry can start to gauge. Potential clients can understand, oh, what I need is actually a biohazard clean rather than a generic basic domestic clean or commercial.
So we have our really common ones that I think everybody's familiar with. We have fire and smoke damage. We have death by suicide. We have trauma. We have undiscovered deaths. We have crime scene cleaning. We can have accidents, and I'm not talking particularly road traffic accidents. I'm talking industrial type accidents. But we can also have very common ones, such as infection outbreaks. The particular times of year that we see an influenza outbreak or an MRSA outbreak, and you know that requires a specialist level of cleaning. But we can also be dealing with toxic odors. We can be, we have to be aware of Legionella, asbestos. There are multiple scenarios, from as simple as, and I say simple, but as someone being in a public place and having a nosebleed. That actually, having a severe nosebleed, or falling over and accidentally bumping their head and bleeding, that we treat all blood as if it's contaminated. We can't differentiate. It's high risk. So it's absolutely everywhere.
That was really comprehensive. Thank you, Janet. And I think that will be very intriguing to people listening in. So one of the things that you've alluded to is that biohazard cleaning isn't necessarily the things that you can see with your naked eye, but there are all sorts of other pathogens that maybe exist. So why is proper training and due diligence absolutely a non-negotiable in this arena?
A couple of reasons. Well, there's more than a couple, but I think for me, there's two main reasons. I think from a legality point of view, first and foremost, you can breach health and safety laws, you can breach environmental laws. If you're not doing it properly, you can actually spread the risk of infection. You can cross-contaminate. And therefore, the whole purpose of a biohazard cleaner is to secure the space and make it safe. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're having the opposite effect. So for me, that risk is very real, around the legality side of it, and damage to your own reputation, understanding those cleaning protocols. But I think the second side, the other side of that, is the emotional side of it. Those risks are really high. You know, I can, as I said to you at the beginning, I can still remember our very first hugely sensitive, emotional biohazard clean, and that will stay with me forever. And when you've done things like that, you become very much aware of your responsibility towards your employees and to yourself, to make sure that they are in the best possible place mentally to be able to be equipped to deal with this kind of work. It's, you know, if you're not ready and you're not trained, it's unethical. It's as simple as that. It's literally unethical. The physical weight of doing this kind of work is serious. That's it. That's the only way I can describe it.
How do you and your team, I don't know if shake off is the right word, but you know, how do you decompress after maybe a more traumatic biohazard scenario?
That's a really, really good question. And the way I particularly teach mental health awareness as part of my training, because I'm very much aware of those how those scenes can trigger employees, and I think it's about not just from an emotional point of view, but from a safety point of view as well. You know, you're going out into some very, very high risk scenarios. You're dealing with people who are often in crisis. I think that's the only way to describe it. So to provide that level of support is about being aware of your own responsibilities as an employer around mental health, recognizing the need for your team to decompress, to be able to create that safe space where they can come and talk to you, and if necessary, you can signpost them to the next level. And it's being very aware of patterns. You know, after a really traumatic clean, are we seeing people take time off? Is there a change in their behaviour? What policies and procedures have we got in place to catch them if they begin to feel the effects, that psychological effect? And one of the other things that we talk about, which may sound really odd, but we talk about gallows humour. You know, if I'm not suggesting that any of what we do is humorous in any way, shape, or form, but to have a space where you can come back and you can use that decompression, and you can almost find a little bit of humour in what you've done. It almost builds the resilience of what you're doing, and I think that's absolutely vital. It can be appropriate in the right place.
Agreed. And I think a lot of the emergency services do have some of that practice running through, again, just to help people let go of some of the tension in an appropriate and honouring way as well. But yes, I get it. Moving into a slightly different space. So, you know, what I'm hearing is that this can be quite a detailed, involved, and stressful, potentially traumatic type of cleaning. What sort of pay scale could a biohazard employee hope to make, and maybe a company owner hope to make? What should they be charging or earning?
Good question, and it's quite a big scale, to be really honest with you. I think for employees, very often we're starting to look at companies getting into the scale of around £20 to £30 an hour in terms of hourly pay. Lots of our cleaning business owners will operate on a daily basis, and that can go from 300 to 500. The most common way we see this, and I see a lot of my graduates working on this basis, is to look at the project as a whole. And they do some very high risk work, and projects will normally start at around £3,000 upwards. If we're talking some serious projects such as hoarding, then generally we're looking at around 7,000 to 8,000. What I would say is the things to factor into that and to be aware of is that includes their training. PPE is not cheap, real PPE. We're looking at chemicals that will do the work for you. And, you know, we have to factor in all of those things, our air scrubbers and the other kinds of equipment and chemicals that we need. So I think that when we, you know, that's those kinds of, they sound like high costs, but when we look at what's needed to be able to meet that, those costs are kind of baked into our actual price. But yeah, very often the high complex work, of course, it's going to be quite expensive because of the risk level involved.
And I think it's really important to underline that, yes, there's risk to all of the employees entering into that zone, but there are costs, as you say. There are running costs, training costs, retention costs to kind of maintain your team, and have them willingly trained to a high standard turn up time after time to a scene that needs
and just to add to that very briefly, is that remember the majority of this work is reactive. There's an element that's planned and scheduled, but it's reactive work. And so those pay scales have to reflect the nature that you might be called out on a weekend. We were just talking about weekends, weren't we? But you might be called out on a weekend. You could be called out to get to site within a 2-hour time frame. So I think it has to be, your rate has to be reflective of that emergency type response that you're offering.
So in practical terms, and this is really your wheelhouse, what kind of training and certification should a cleaning business look for, and should a client insist on before taking or tendering for any biohazard job?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the basics have to be in place, and that's COSH training, infection control training, cross-contamination, all of those things, and then to move that. So that's a kind of bare minimum, and then to move on to your more serious things, dealing with sharps, needles, dealing with hazardous waste, actually carrying out the cleaning, decontamination processes. So those are, we kind of start with our basics, and then we add more skills in and move up. I think for clients, and I'm glad you asked me that question, because in an ideal world, clients would be able to find a register and know that the company that they're dealing with, that they're choosing to handle their biohazard situation, has had the right training and is certified, that they have real experience, that they have the right insurance. Very often we see companies that aren't covered because it's not part of a standard cleaning insurance policy. We have to make sure that that's covered. And licenses, we very often see, in fact, we were just talking about it last night in one of our group chats, that having the right licenses to be able to take that waste away and have that audit compliance to deal with that. We often see companies that don't have the right level tiers of licenses. And as if you are choosing a provider, you need to be looking for that credibility. At the end of the day, you want to know that you're in safe hands. And I think knowing that those checks are there would be a real reassurance to anybody looking for a biohazard provider.
So you touched on it, but I know that you're being quite vocal about a lack of regulation in the industry. In your opinion, what would regulation look like, and why is it so urgent at the moment?
I am vocal about it, and you're absolutely right. And I believe, I don't just believe, I've seen it, that at this current moment in time, anybody can be a biohazard cleaner. As odd as that is, it's dangerous. And I think we need almost a national standard to say this is where we're aiming, the standard that we're aiming for people to be at. So they have the right skills and they're following the right protocols, but they have the right insurance and the things that we've talked about. And I think proper licensing or a kind of register would create that level of credibility to the industry. Because at the moment, I don't feel that the industry, there are people in the industry doing it in beautifully. They're doing it and following it, and they're legitimate and they're compliant. But as with any industry, you will have people that don't. And I think that makes the industry it doesn't give it the seriousness that it actually deserves. So I think accountability is important with audit systems to verify safety. We've talked about this before. I'm pushing very hard with the HSE and the British Cleaning Council to push this forward. But as with anything, when you're trying to change the status quo, is quite hard. But I do want to see proper regulations around the waste handling and seeing those high standards in place. I think it's about raising the bar, if I'm honest with you. It's really about bringing, we've got some amazing people in this industry that do it really well. It's recognizing them and using them as the bar and saying, this is where you need to be. Because without that, that whole attitude of this, that'll do, that can lead to, I think that can lead to serious illness, and it's a dangerous way to behave in this industry.
And that's the underlying point, isn't it? We're actually messing around with people's health, well-being, and life at the end of a clean like this. And because some of these things that we're talking about are invisible, if they have not been treated well or right or correctly, they leave people vulnerable to all sorts of things. And that's the worrying thing. Like, I know even like for us, we get inquiries from hoarders. I've dabbled in that with neighbours a long time ago in my history, but it didn't take me long to understand that there is a responsibility that I have to these individuals that I'm seeking to serve. And actually, unless I'm equipped, trained, and trained to equip them as well, then I'm doing them a disservice, and I'm doing myself a disservice. So yeah, these are services we no longer offer, and I could not ask my team members to offer because I'm not equipping them at this current stage to that degree. We're nearly out of time, but I'd love to ask, what has been your greatest, maybe two-pronged, your greatest cleaning challenge to date, and perhaps your greatest leadership challenge to date?
My greatest cleaning challenge. To be honest with you, there's so many. I would struggle to pick one. I've worked in some really complicated situations, some emotionally charged situations. I think for me, well, I don't think, I know. It's about, I've seen things and come across things that you could not, I couldn't, if I told you, you'd struggle to believe. The way in which people in our society fall through the gaps, and the way in which, people are living, whether that's the standard of their accommodation, the fact that they can't do anything about their situation. They could be living in the worst circumstances, but they're mentally not in a great place. So I've always found those ones a bit of a challenge, and from an emotional point of view. The more complex, the better, funnily enough. You walk into a property and the ceilings are bowed, and there's structural risks, and it's hoarded, and we've got animal carcasses. It's a bit of a walk in the park, to be quite honest with you, because it's the emotional side, I think, that really is hard to deal with. So those have been some of my challenges. And I think advocating for changes in the industry, advocating for more regulations, that's been equally as difficult for me in the situation that I'm in now. I'm sending qualified businesses into the market. I'm equipping them with the knowledge, the education, and all those good things. And we now need to take that to the next level. So advocating for that has been really difficult, but it's not something that any of us are about to give up on, because it's too important. But yeah, it can be it's been an emotional journey for sure.
So, I mean, your answers kind of tee me up perfectly for questions that are on my mind. What keeps you going in this training and advocacy work? Is there a bigger why behind what you do every day?
Yeah, I guess it's to put that in a nutshell as much as I can. When people leave me, they've been to my office, they've they've done the training with me, we've worked together, the support goes on, but they'll leave my office motivated, knowledgeable. They are going out there with a set of skills that they can use over and over again. And those skills don't just keep them safe, it keeps their clients safe, and it keeps the general public safe. And when they say to me, Janet, I've got no gaps in my knowledge, I know exactly what I'm doing, that for me is my motivation. That's where I'm aiming for. And so I think what keeps me going is I can see people raising the bar. We've got a membership group who every day are going one step further. They're dealing with incredible situations and they're doing them brilliantly. That's the only way I can describe it. That for me is worth everything, to see them operating at that level. Small businesses, but operating at the level of big businesses with their knowledge and their expertise. I couldn't be any more prouder.
That's just such a beautiful answer. So Janet, how would people get hold of you, access your training, and who are the ideal people that need your training?
I think anybody that is in the cleaning industry that wants to take their business to the next level. So I don't particularly work with very small businesses who are not set up. This is an industry where you do need to have your basics in place. So ideally sort of businesses that are a year in or 1 to 2 years in, can find me via my website. You can email me. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. We were talking about that this morning. So yeah, you can message me on LinkedIn. There's an inquiry page on my website. I think I know the logical thing for everybody is to chat first. Do not book anything. Talk to me first. I'm afraid I'm one of those people that's quite direct. If I don't think it's you're ready for it yet, I'm always going to be honest and tell you that. If I think it's 6 months down the line for you, you'll be ready, great. And I'll help you get to that point. But if you are not set up and you're not ready, then I'll be very honest with you, because we're looking for people to come into this industry and raise it one.
Brilliant. I've got one last question for you, Janet. It's been an absolute joy. I've been scribbling notes all the way through, so there's still yet more stuff I've got to consider and I've learnt. But it's a question from our last guest, Gary Binder from the Churchill Group. And he wanted to ask you, or the next guest, which is you, if you were leaving school tomorrow, what piece of advice would you give to yourself based on this current environment?
Good question. What would I give myself? If I was, think bigger. I think people get trapped in thinking small. There are so many opportunities out there. I believe I hear people say to me, "Oh, Janet, I'm no good at sales," or "I don't understand my numbers," and I don't know how to grow a business. That's all achievable. Think bigger. Don't just think otherwise people build a business and what they do is they create a job for themselves. Building a business is about building it how you want it, to design the life that you want. So if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, don't settle. If you want a different life, I don't think it's preordained from birth that some people are successful and some people aren't. I think anybody can thrive in business if you do the right things. So think bigger and have that self-belief. Put the effort in. You can get there.
I love that answer. That's one of my top 10 business tips as well. Think big and then think bigger than that. Brilliant. You have been delightful. I should say Gary's answer to that was network more, which I thought was interesting too. But yeah, you've been absolutely delightful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy, and most of all, for your expertise and high levels of professionalism. We need more of you in the industry. For anyone that is influential in this area, for anyone from the British Cleaning Council listening in, from anyone that writes policies or laws listening in, please organise a meeting with this fabulous woman. You have got a lot to learn. We have got a lot to do. And one of her phrases was that we've got a kind of a duty of care, not only to keep ourselves safe in this sphere, but the public as well. And that is the essence of great biohazard cleaning. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
For those listening, watch out for our August guests. I'll be posting soon who that will be. But for now, have a great day wherever you are. And if you're listening on replay, please leave a comment, write a question, and Janet or I will come back to you with an answer to that. Thanks again for listening. Bye-bye.